Everybody is going to family restaurants these days. Seems nobody wants to hang out in a dank pit no more.
What exactly did you have in mind?
I don't know. Pub?
Drinking.
Beer. Pubs.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
This thing rules. The thing rules.
Oh, hey, what's up? I'm Brian Altano.
And I'm Max Scoville.
This is a show where we discuss something we love,
Unpack why we love it,
explain where it came from,
try to remember our first impressions of it,
share our weird stories about it,
maybe learn something new about it along the way.
but first and foremost, we're here to celebrate the fact that this thing rules.
Hey man, want to take a dive?
Yes,
Take a walk on the wild side? You want to go to the wrong side of the tracks? Go downtown?
Dive into the
to
deep end.
Yeah, so let's talk about dive bars. Brian, what's a dive bar?
This is tough because we all know what a bar is, and a dive bar, it's like there's no way to describe it without being like it's like a regular bar but worse.
It's like
it's
like obscenity. You know it when you see it. You know.
Yeah. I would say a dive bar is sort of like a local kind of hole in the wall establishment. It's not part of a chain, really. It is a place that's been around for a while. It's got a bunch of character. It's a little rough around the edges. It's kind of grimy, but it feels homey, right? And they've got their own sort of way of doing things. They've got their own way of making drinks. They've got their own way of making food. There's, the regulars that you see all the time. I think that like for the longest time, it was hard to sort of say what the difference was between a bar and a dive bar. I think that somewhere around I want to say like 2012, 2013, specifically in San Francisco where we were both living at the time, there became this like big push for mixology and these sort of like elevated cocktails and the concept of like being like, oh, you don't get a drink at the bar, you get a cocktail, and it's made by a mixologist, and he's got like a little mustache and like a little hat, and he's the kind of guy you see with like the fix-it bikes and stuff like that with the pant leg rolled up during the day.
Fix-it bikes?
Fixie bikes, what do you call them?
Fix-it bikes?
What are they called?
Fixies.
Fixies, whatever. I don't fucking ride those things.
Fix-it bike is a broken one, my friend. Don't ride that at all. Then again, fixies are pretty fucked, so probably don't ride those.
Fixies are pretty fucked, yeah. So these guys came in and they took what was a very simple, basic concept of like making a vodka soda, right? Or making a rum and coke, and they turned it into this thing that took 7 minutes. And me, as someone who's always loved, sitting down at a bar and having a cocktail or whatever, all of a sudden looked up and was just like, wow, this guy is like really going to town with like the ginger peeling and like rimming the lemon on, and he's got a grater that he's using for
doing what to the lemon.
Yeah, he's ringing the lemon around. So all this stuff, and like then you would get the bill and you'd be like $19. Yeah, this was in 2014. Now they're like 25, 26. Sure.
So I think
so that made a big line in the sand for me between like this is what a dive bar is and what a bar is.
I think you are putting an elaborate flourish on a very simple way of delineating a regular bar from a dive bar.
I'm ringing the lemon.
Yeah, you're really rimming the lemon.
Rode on my fix-it bike and I'm ringing that lemon.
I think a dive bar doesn't make any attempts to win anyone over. A dive bar simply is. A dive bar is there. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like the bicycle.
Yep.
Dive bars are, you'll see a lot of bars that sort of try to, they try to reinvent themselves. They try to, they'll get like cute new menus. They get like fancy glassware. They're like, we try to get a fancy cocktail. A dive bar, I feel like a good dive bar, the equivalent of that is that they maybe get some promotion from like Fireball, where they get like, we got a new Fireball machine. You want Fireball? Fireball shots are 2 for $5 or whatever. It's like one of those, like they're not going out of their way to do anything to try to really upset the status quo. Like they keep things pretty much the way they are. And again, this for the longest time, I think it was kind of hard to tell what's the difference between a dive bar and a bar. And in a lot of ways, depending where you go, sometimes a bar is just a bar. Sometimes a bar can be, I feel like medium classy, like it can be kind of, it can ride this sort of cusp. A true dive bar is a fucking hellhole. Like it's a real, here's a good tell for a dive bar. What does the bathroom look like?
Not great.
If the bathroom has clean walls, it's not a dive bar. If the bathroom has graffiti on every possible surface, it's a dive bar.
It's a dive bar. Sometimes if in the men's room, the stall doors are missing.
Yes,
because they don't want people doing cocaine in there.
Yeah,
which means that guys just the kind of people who would take a shit at a dive bar, which is not me. If I've ever been in a situation like that, I'm just like, I gotta leave. Do take a shit at a dive bar in a place that has no doors. I also think the lighting is a big part of it too. Like there's a sort of finite amount of like neon signage and shit you can have inside of a dive bar before it just becomes like a bar or a sports bar or something like that, right? I think that's a lot of it too. Like sports bars are basically just like, okay, like it's very rare that a dive bar goes, everyone in there is just wearing a San Francisco 49ers hat or like a Giants jersey or something like that, right? Because then it just becomes a sports bar, and that happens a lot. Where like
sports bars have more TVs. A dive bar will have like 1 or 2 TVs. You know, like that's not a dive bar has really no other focus than just having some drinks.
Yeah.
You know, it's not having fancy drinks. It's not having good wine. It's not even having good beer necessarily. Like maybe they have some good stuff on tap, but it's not like, you know, they're not like, we've got 151 rotating drafts, got to catch them all. Like that's not what they're doing there. I mean, unpretentious is the idea. And the problem is that the second that's a thing that people want, a lack of pretension or like pretense is, that becomes a thing that businesses try to chase. And in the process, I mean, it's almost like, like Jeet Kune Do, like the Bruce Lee fighting style, where it's like, be like water, just go with the flow, like, take the form of whatever. Like, there's a certain degree of like, a dive bar has to sort of, it has to be fluid. It really does have to have a lot of fluids and liquids inside it. That's the point. But like, it also has to sort of not react to what people are doing. Like, it has to kind of just stay where it is and keep doing its thing. And I feel like a good dive bar has a good sense of humor. Like maybe the extent of their posturing will be to put out like a little shitty chalk sign outside that's like has a quip,
right?
Like it'll have some shit where it's like, I don't know, something. Is it a day that ends in Y? Then it's a good day to drink, or some there's always stupid bumper sticker.
Free
shit
beer
on there.
tomorrow, right?
Exactly.
Like
one of those things. Yeah.
Think about it this way: like if you wouldn't watch a pod race in the Mos Eisley Cantina, right? Like those guys, they wouldn't put TVs up in there, and fucking Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan are sitting around.
I love that that's where you went with that, because
because I think that was like the first. I mean, before I was old enough to go to a dive bar myself, because my parents weren't really drinkers, and sometimes we would go to a place to get dinner or something like that on a trip, and I'd be like, oh, I think this is a dive bar, like I'd get like chicken fingers or burger.
You get there's something we don't have in America properly is a pub, which. Pubs are another story. That's a whole other animal. A dive bar is predominantly a watering hole. It is a place for drinking. Maybe they have food. Maybe they have like hot dogs or a popcorn machine. Maybe they have some kind of pop-up in there that's doing like chicken sandwiches or like a pizza oven out front or something like that. Probably not. It's probably not. They got one of those weird racks that has Fritos behind the bar. They sell you a bag of chips. That's it. But there's also these other things where it's rougher on the edges, family establishments that have a full bar, like a tavern or a pub or like a family restaurant that serves cocktails or whatever. Like there are variations here, but like a true dive bar is like, it's got an ugly sign.
Yep.
Probably a crappy door. Really, we just kind of keep going with this. It's got some kind of level of shittiness to everything about it.
The furniture is old. The everything feels sort of like beat up. There's stuff that needs replacing. It's dusty. When you go there in the afternoon, you can see like a layer of dust on top of things, cobwebs in the corner and stuff like that.
When you go there in the afternoon, it's nighttime.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a cavern.
Which I love. And then it's, we could do a whole other episode on tiki bars, but there is an overlap with some sort of grimy, dingy tiki bars.
Yeah.
And again, it's same
stupid
deal,
that
right?
like we have our vices, but I feel like a good reason we love dive bars so much is because of Star Wars. And it is like the Mos Eisley Cantina is Yeah, it's a dive bar. Wooer's Cantina, or Chow Moon's Cantina. Sorry, Wooer just works there. Chow Moon is a Wookiee who manages the bar.
I just moved my Wooer action figure down to my bar in my living room, and it's very funny because he's like standing in front of all my bottles of booze, holding up a little cup, because he's one of the only Star Wars characters. A bunch of Star Wars characters come with cups, but he's the only one that just has one glued into his hand permanently. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's my bartender now.
I thought Aunt Beru had one. Does she come with a milk carton glued in her hand? Why are we like this? No,
Good
that's
question.
Yeah.
No,
Anyway,
but yeah, the Mos Eisley Cantina is basically the first. That is, I think, the first time you and I probably ever saw what a dive bar was growing up, right? Maybe
Yeah,
in
no,
some other movies, but
I had my first Star Wars toy that I ever got, and I don't think I'd even seen all of the movies in their entirety. Like I'd seen them in bits and pieces, and I don't know if I'd ever actually seen the Mos Eisley scene. My mom got me the Micro Machines transforming Cantina playset that was shaped like, for whatever reason, it was shaped like C-3PO's head.
I have it on my shelf right now. I love it so
You
much.
open it up, and it has a place where C-3PO is not allowed to go, which is the cantina, which doesn't make any sense. And then it's got all these little, weird. It's got like, Nabrin Leeds and Figrin Dan and like Ponda Baba. These weird ass dudes, and like
There's a Greedo and a Han Solo, and they're both like sitting, right?
the action feature of that is it's got Greedo and Han Solo. I love that we're like, let's talk about dive bars. Anyway, here's a Micro Machines dive bar that we had when we were 8 years old. No, it's got the action feature they have in there is there's a door, and you push the thing, and two sand troopers come in. They just like kick the door down, and they pop out. And the other one is you put Han and Greedo in their little chairs. And if you push down on the table between them, Greedo's chair flips back and he just like flies across the room, which would have been a really weird version of that scene if Greedo had just like ragdolled out of the fucking frame.
Yeah. It is so funny to me that there's a button you can push. There's also there's these doors, I think, that you can. There's another button. The doors burst open and
The sand troopers come in. Yeah,
I love all that so much.
No, it's anyway. But again, probably not a great toy because I'm like, man, I want to go here. And then the second I was like old enough to go to bars, I was like, they make bars like that in real life, and you can go there, and they're just like full of weirdos. I love a good the clientele is a big part of a dive bar. It's just people kind of, you don't want to necessarily mess with them. You don't want to talk to them. They're kind of doing their own thing. The owner or the bartenders are usually like some of the best characters there. They don't want to be there.
Yeah, they don't want to be there. They don't want to make you a drink, but also like this is explaining this to people is like explaining to my kid that cereal used to come with toys, but they used to do a thing at bars, and maybe some still do, called buybacks, and that was when you would buy like 3 drinks, the fourth one the bartender would be like, hey, this one's on me. And it was just called a buyback. And it was one of those things where it's just like, there was no signage about it, right? It was just this thing that would happen at dive bars, which again, you don't get at like classy cocktail lounges and with mixologists and shit like that, because it's a whole fucking thing for them to make you a drink. I remember like going to a dive bar and somebody would come in and order, what's a good example of like a ridiculous drink that takes a long time, besides a Bloody Mary?
Manhattan.
Yeah. Right. And someone would order one of those at like 7:00 on a Friday night, and you'd be like, man, what the fuck? Like, and the dive bar bartender's just kind of like, man, I would love to crack a beer, give you a shot, or just make you a simple cocktail, but I'm over here ringing the lemon, for this fix it bike guy, all this shit. So yeah, that's like, that was one of the things to me where I was just like, these people don't want to be doing this, but they are friendlier than the people who went to college for this. Right? Like they are maybe they're not as good at it, but who cares? Because they can get me a cocktail for $5. And if I have 3 of them, the fourth one's on the house. And I love that so much. There's also like, there's no coherent theme in terms of signage and decor in a dive bar. That's the other thing.
The coherent theme is that, was it free from a distributor?
Yeah. It's chaos, or it's like, so there's this dive bar in Petaluma called Gale's Central Club, which I love because when you walk in, the first thing you see on the left is a fucking upright, dead, stuffed bear, and it's got a this sort of like rainbow collar around it with a big sign that says Bob Gale, September 29th, 1967, State, Alaska, which means that the owner of this place shot this bear, somehow got it to, North Bay in
Oh, I know this bar.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's just there, and they put like hats and shit on him all year, like seasonal stuff depending on what it is. And behind that is a huge shelf where you can go in and you're like, I didn't get enough alcohol at this bar where the alcohol's cheap. Can I get a bottle of Jaeger to go? And so like it's very odd because a lot of bars don't have like a distribution license in terms of being able to sell you liquor after hours. But when liquor stores are closed, if you're at a bar and you're like, oh, you know what, I'll get a thing of Seagram's for the road or whatever. So you can do that there. And what I also love about this place is like, again, no coherence with the signage or the decor or anything like that. There's just like there's this painting of this like gold woman with her tits out. There's like a gremlin. There's these hand-drawn signs of just like all this food you can get, which is all just like frozen microwave bullshit, like those big, Bigham's steak burgers or whatever those.
Yeah, they got an air fryer in the back.
Yeah, if that. It's probably just a microwave. So yeah, they have all this shit like that. Nobody's in the back like making fucking habanero chicken wings or anything like that. Nobody's marinating flank steak. They're just serving you food.
What's your favorite dive bar memory with me?
Definitely in New York City.
Blackguards.
Absolutely. So yeah, my younger brother's 8 years younger than me, which means that like time hasn't caught up to him in his ability to
He is the only
drink.
person I've ever seen peer pressure you.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. So we went to this place. You and I were in town for Comic-Con, and we went to this place called Blackguards, and there's no way Blackguards is not a dive bar, right? Like it just screams it.
Yeah, no. So the one thing I will say that makes it maybe not a dive bar is that it's large.
It is large.
Like I think it is an old enough establishment that it may constitute a pub or a tavern.
Yeah.
Or a sports bar. Like it might
it's literally called Blackguards Pub. So yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
It's funny when you go on TripAdvisor, it says Blackguard Restaurant.
The sort of the commitment to being a pub, or like to try to have that, to echo that sort of like old school, like, British, Irish, like pub decor. That's where it kind of obscures things in terms of dive bar, because I feel like at one point they were fancy and then they just didn't bother upkeeping it, like, and they've got nice heavy wood furniture, and that becomes kind of almost like a de facto, bar look.
I think this place has actually jumped fully into bar territory since we've been there, because it looks like they put up a bunch of flat screen TVs and people are watching sports. So, boo!
The fucking nerve of these people!
How dare you attract new clientele?
Blackguards is for getting blackout drunk. That's what. It's for.
So, what made this place a dive bar for us specifically, outside of the fact that we were just like pounding shots and we got very drunk in there, was somebody, I think my brother or you or me, somebody decided to order, or we were talking about Irish car bombs.
Your brother.
Yeah, my brother. Which is it's a pint of Jameson that you drop a shot of, what is it, Bailey's?
It's like Bailey's and Tullamore Dew mixed together or something.
Yeah. And offensive. Obviously,
yeah,
right?
It's like offensive for so many reasons.
It's offensive for so many reasons. It's offensive because like just calling something an Irish car bomb is bad. It's a bad, it's a weird mix of alcohol. Like you shouldn't put shots in beer anyway, unless you're like, you have fucking demons in your, what's that thing your dad says? Like they've got squirrels running around their head or whatever.
You got rats in her.
Yeah, shit like that, right? So we go to order that, and the guy goes, we don't do those here. And I was like, whoa, okay. I didn't know like a dive bar had a line when it comes to stuff like that. And this guy comes out of the back who is just a character, a fucking cantina alien, if we'd ever seen one.
It was if Trevor Phillips could hold down a job.
Yeah. And he just came out of nowhere and pointed to this huge scar across the middle of his neck, like somebody had tried to slit his throat in a war but failed, but sort of didn't, and goes, never drink those. One time I dropped the glass into the other glass and it shattered and I drank it and the glass got stuck in my throat. See? And we were like, holy shit. Like it was that Arrested Development thing with the guy with the fake arm, but like in real life. And it just completely like, it was one of those things where like it made us stone cold sober for like 30 seconds.
Well,
but
what didn't is the fact that they still gave us Irish car bombs. They just gave us plastic shot glasses. Which
These
is
are
like
less offensive.
It becomes like a very stupid little party game where you drop them in and they just float for a second.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah. So Brian, you have a fair amount of, despite all evidence to the contrary, you have like a modicum of common sense.
Yeah, I do
most
try.
of the time.
Street smarts. I'd
Not
say.
with your brother around. It was the funniest thing because like there's definitely shit where I've been like, dude, we should do this thing, and you're like, no, fuck that, I'm going home. Like you are also master of the Irish goodbye. Like you'll be like in the olden days, you'd be like, I'm gonna go out for a cigarette, and you would just leave.
Yeah, I would just leave.
Like, fuck you, man. But with your brother around, you were just It was like somebody else was driving the car. There was luckily no motor vehicles involved in the situation.
Yeah, we were walking, but
you were just like, he was like, we're getting Irish car bombs, and you were just like, oh no.
So I think what happened with that specifically was you and I were in town for work, right? And it became increasingly apparent on Saturday night that we didn't have to work on Sunday.
We shot more videos than they could edit.
Yeah.
We were so good at working that they told us to stop.
Yeah, they told us to
Let's
stop.
put it
like,
that way. That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, they were like, you guys don't need to come in the next day. And I think at like 9 o'clock that night. And here's the thing too: you and my brother was like 2 hours late to showing up to this bar.
That was part of the issue. Is we roll into this bar, and it's New York where you can drink until 4 a.m, and we rolled in at like 4 p.m.
Yeah,
and there's no one there aside from this pirate hiding behind the bar somewhere, waiting to show us his scar. And
we hung out till like 8, and then my brother rolled in fresh from work and was like, all right, I'm ready to throw down, and I can go for the next 6 hours. This is before he was married, before
Jaeger bombs, yeah.
Before he had kids. Like, yeah, oh my God. So and then we were getting texts being like, hey, we probably don't need you guys tomorrow. And it just became this thing where we're like, and I think we might have told the story, the other side of the story, on the Bloody Mary episode of this show.
Oh yeah,
because
this is a prequel to that story.
Yeah, so that was one of the best Bloody Marys we ever had, because that was a time where we're like, our bodies were like, you need this desperately.
We had removed all the salt from our bodies using all sorts of our arcane solvents. But no, that was a very good dive bar experience. My favorite is Would You Believe Cocktails?
Oh my God. Would you believe cocktails?
So Would You Believe Cocktails is the name
the stupidest name.
It's a name
for a
of
bar ever made.
Of a business that somebody decided they should write on the sign and put outside of the business.
Yep.
And somehow it's still there. I haven't been there. My wife actually got mad at me because we were on like a date out in the city, and I was like, we should go there. And she's like, no. Yeah, absolutely not. And I was like, oh, dang.
They had like poison liquor there. I remember every time we went there, they'd be like, can I have a vodka soda? We're out of vodka. We only have, patchouli. And you're like, what?
No, there's like a Simpsons bit where like comic book guy goes to the, Moe's, and he's like, I'll have a cranberry schnapps. And he's like, that's just painted on there. And it's like, it's just like part of the mural on the wall. And I feel like that is the closest I've seen to that in real life, where they would be like, they'd be like, they have like a menu. And again, this one is odd because it is definitely a dive bar, but it's trying not to be. Like, it's calling itself a cocktail bar. Like, it's trying really hard, but not that hard. And you go in there, you're like, can I have this thing? And they're like, we don't have most of the ingredients for that. And you're like, all right, what about this thing? Can I have 6 Bud Lights in a bucket? They're like, sorry, we only got 5 Bud Lights. And you're like, what do you mean you don't only...
I will never get over how stupid that fucking name is. It is so funny to me, because it's like, it asks a question that you immediately say yes to in a way that you're like, why would you even bother posing that? Would you believe cocktails? Yes, of course I would.
Here's the thing. It's like, not to put too fine a point on it, but it's a front for criminal activity.
Yes, big time.
Which is why it's called Would You Believe Cocktails, in case somebody comes by like, hey, what are you guys doing in there?
Well,
would you believe cocktails?
Would you believe that pigs can fly? Yeah. I can't believe it's not butter. Like,
would you believe they put a man on the moon?
It's so funny.
Yeah.
That place is a disaster. Amazing dive bar. San Francisco also has the Page, which is one of my favorite dive bars. And kind of classier.
I feel like that place lost its dive bar credibility. I think it became too much of an institution to the point that it became like... There's a bunch of spots in that one's on what, like Deviz or Lower Haight somewhere.
Lower Haight-ish Deviz. Same with Nicky's.
It's a good bar, but it's also, I think it went with it rose with the rising tides of gentrification. Like, it didn't.
I've been kicked out of that bar twice for reasons that were not my fault at all.
Go on.
Okay, one of them sort of was. No, both of them I guess were because I brought
Okay.
it. So my friend Billy came into town. I grew up buddies with him in New Jersey, and he was we pre-gamed at my apartment, which used to be like 2 blocks from the page, and that's like, so I lived up the hill. So there's like upper Haight and lower Haight. And upper Haight in San Francisco is all hippies, Grateful Dead. It's like, I don't know how I ended up in that neighborhood.
That is the hate street that people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is like for that to be my first place ever living in San Francisco is just like, what, me of all people, like I like when like a musical act has an idea of what the song is going to be like when they start it, and they also know how it's going to end. So the idea of just like a meandering jam band that you follow around the country and you eat, melted fucking weed popcorn balls in their parking lot and do dabs or whatever. Nothing I hate more musically. Like, and so to move there for the first time and just being like, hey, I need groceries and furniture and clothes. And everyone was like, would you like a bong? And I was like, no. Would you like a fucking hemp tie-dye hat? And I'm like, no, man, I need a couch. Like I need shit for my apartment. But if you walk down to Lower Haight, bunch of really cool restaurants. Hippies are scared of hills notoriously. They only like to sit on top of them. They can't walk to the bottom and they can't go back up. It's kind of like horses and stairs. And so I would go down to the bottom all the time because I'm not a hippie. And Lower Haight had a bunch of really cool dive bars and stuff like that. But I would have to walk back up this big ass hill after drinking. And so one night we went to the Page. I got really drunk there and was walking back up the hill and had to throw up because I think I lit a Parliament menthol light the wrong way.
Oh no.
Which if you do that, so Parliament menthol lights have a recessed...
They say on the box, don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah. I mean, it also says don't smoke cigarettes on the box. Don't smoke cigarettes, period, is good advice.
The Surgeon General advises you not to smoke cigarettes, period, but if you're going to do it, don't do it backwards. That's real bad.
I think now they're probably like, yeah, sure, why not? But no, so if you light one of those the wrong way and you've been drinking, it is basically an instant throw up button. And so I lit a Parliamental light walking out of the Page and immediately threw up on a Beyonce tour poster that was like mounted on a wall. That was not a time I got kicked out. So my friend Billy comes into town. We're drinking like crazy at our apartment, or my apartment, and we walk down the hill. We go to the Page. And my friend was single at the time, and he starts flirting with the bartender. And the bartender's name is Paige. And he was the most incredulous about this pairing that I've ever seen anyone about anything. Like there are Christian Science museums that are less incredulous about dinosaurs and the moon and shit like that than he was about a bartender at the Page being named Paige. And he was just like, wait, hold on. Let me get this straight. And he did it like for like 15 minutes straight. And she was like, Brian, I've seen you here a bunch. I respect you. Usually you bring in good people. You tip well. You don't make a mess. You don't cause any trouble. You two, and especially him, you need to get him the fuck out of here. So he kicked us out. And then a few years ago, my brother was in town, different brother than the one we got drunk at Blackguards. And I brought him and his, at the time, I think 1-year-old son into there. And we sat down, we ordered cocktails, and the bartender, I think still Paige, looks over and just goes, we don't let kids in here, and especially not babies. Get the fuck out. And so I was like, all right, cool. And we got up and we left. But long story short, love that bar very much. I have a painting of it downstairs that an illustrator did from the Bay Area. And yeah, it's when my wife and I get a rare date night that we don't, and we're also in San Francisco, we go there. It's one of my favorites.
One of my favorite spots over in the East Bay is called the Eli's Mile High Club, which is actually a like 85-year-old blues venue that has been co-opted by socialist punks, and it's just the best. It's I always describe it as like the Foot Clan hideout from the first Ninja Turtles movie.
Yeah.
They actually are currently in like, they had this amazing sort of back patio area that's currently under like public scrutiny because I guess they didn't do zoning code permit shit or something. And
Oh,
apparently
yeah.
it, like,
You were telling me they're like
it,
threatening
like-
to shut it down.
it like leaked on their neighbor's roof, and the neighbor's suing them for $600,000. It's like stupid. It's stupid shit like that. That's just like little things making my life slightly worse because I can't go sit outside next to a giant graffiti mural of Beavis and Butthead dressed like crust punks.
Don't fucking move next to a dive bar. Just don't do it. It's the same people that move next to John's Pizza in New York City, and they're like, we got to do something about these 102-year-old coal ovens. Just don't live there. Live somewhere else.
No, this place has been there longer than other things. Anyway, it's a phenomenal spot. It's a dive bar in that it's so incredibly committed to preserving a certain status quo.
Right.
Which is just and again, they still have blues performers. They have like a Blues Tuesdays or whatever, and like they have it's got just the most like amazing just like punk staff. They're just beautiful scumbags with neck tattoos, and they're like surly, but also they're good at heart, and they have an incredible food. They do a grown-up Happy Meal where you get a tall boy of PBR and a burger and tots.
Oh, it's so good.
And it's like they give you the whole thing, and it's just a Happy Meal, and they're frequently just kind of like skirting the line of like, will we get sued for this? Is McDonald's going to bother suing a fucking dive bar? They have a Taco Bell knock. They have a crust wrap, which is a crunch
that's
wrap.
awesome.
But and then they make their own hot sauce, and you go there and they'll be like, they'll be just like this some just.
We could do a whole episode, and we will, on hot sauce. But I just want to say real quick that if an establishment makes its own hot sauce, like it is instantly just top of my list. Like it doesn't even have to be great, but I'm just like, man, you care. You didn't just put a fucking Cholula or a Tapatio or a fucking Tabasco on the table and just call it a day. You made your own. So special.
No, this spot is just like they're great. They take care of their people. They're I will say that's the thing that almost makes them not a dive bar is that they clearly really give a shit. And that you order the food and they get one of those little buzzer things and you go up and there's somebody standing it looks like almost like a lemonade stand but with like condiments on it, and they're just like they give you a little plastic basket with your fries and shit in it, and they're like, do you want some of our hot sauce that we made? And you're like, sorry, what? And they're like, there's like a a metal band playing, and you're like, what? And they're like, this one's mango habanero, it's pretty spicy if you can handle it. And I'm like, give me some of all of them. And it's like clearly it's a dive bar. They don't need to have hot sauce that they made themselves. They don't need that. But it's still, it's got like it's a grimy hellhole that feels like bad guys would hang out there in an 80s movie. And I mean that in the best way possible. There's another spot that is unquestionably a dive bar called the Avenue, which is over. It's in Oakland. It is, the sign is written in the Sesame Street font. It's on like a green and yellow street sign, and says the Avenue. Above the sign, there are 5 or 6 plastic Halloween skeletons caked in bird shit, wearing Vans high tops, and they have just been sitting outside forever. You go inside, the entirety is decked out in Halloween decorations year round. There are that great stuff, the insulation shit, like the foam you can use to like. They covered the entire ceiling with stalagmites or tights, the ceiling ones,
the popcorn ceiling or whatever.
Kind of, but like with like it's like a cave. So there's like stalagmites of foam coming down, and then they're all painted. It's all painted gray and black and shit, and it looks like
unhealthy.
It looks like a dungeon. And in the back they have like a coffin and a bunch of like Halloween battle axes and shit on the wall. They got all these framed pictures of Lemmy from Motorhead. You go to the bathroom and there's a giant wall of just like glass cases full of Star Wars action figures.
Oh,
and it's
just,
it's like if you were inside my brain, the bar, and it's the best. And they're, I frequently just walk in there and they're just like, somebody had put on Danzig, and I'm like, yeah, this place fucking sucks. I love it here. It's the best. It's fucking awesome. And it's just, the funniest thing though, is on Halloween, they redo the decorations to make them different Halloween decorations. And last year, a couple of years ago, and there's like entire different sections of the bar, different themes. Like one entire side of the bar, they just redid Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is deeply upsetting because like prior to that, it was all just like, creepy Dracularium, gothic chains and shit. And then suddenly it's just neon pink, and there's just like inflatable clowns all over the place, and it was just like way too colorful. And you're like, this is upsetting. I don't want to look at this. But then they took one corner and they made it into a hoarder house, So they took one of their booths by the bar, and they just like they put like an old TV and set it to like a dead channel, and they had stacks of old magazines, and they had just like clothes hanging up on the wall, and it just people didn't realize you were allowed to sit there because it looked so convincingly like a hoarder house. They're like, "Is everything okay?" And they're like, "No, that's our Halloween decor. It's a hoarder house. Go over there. There's a cat skeleton. Check it out." Like it's
awesome.
Such a good. They committed to the bit so well, but yeah, I don't know. Dive bars are
one of my favorites. It's closed now, I think. But you and I used to go there. Was a place in San Francisco called Soda Popinski's.
Oh my god!
Which was a dive bar that had a NES in the back of it.
So Soda Popinski's,
games.
I debate whether or not that counts as a real dive bar because I think it knew what it was doing. I think that is an ironic hipster bar. Okay. Soda Popinski, if you're unfamiliar, dear listeners, is of course the safe for work, family-friendly version of the Punch-Out boss, Vodka Drunkinski.
Right.
Who is the Russian dude in Punch-Out.
Which in Japan was Heroin Shoot-Upski.
Yeah.
It just kept getting worse. Yeah, no. Soda Popinski was this guy in Punch Out that if he played the Mike Tyson, or the Mr. Green version.
Yeah, Ivan
pounding
Drago.
sodas.
Yeah, Ivan Drago by way of Smirnoff. And that was also very much the bar's aesthetic. They had it was all decked out like a Soviet hunting lodge, and they had like fake atomic missiles hanging from the ceiling, and they had like a stuffed bear, and they had just weird communist propaganda everywhere. And then they had a wheel. And they had a big wheel of shots that you could spin. This is one of my favorite things that is frequently in a dive bar, and I love it. Just a big wheel of just
a game.
Arbitrary. I love a game.
I love game.
Yeah, it's like this is the this is the whole bird. What bird in the hand, two in the bush, bird in the hand with that whole thing. But I love the mystery. Like it's like I'll pay $5 for a surprise. I love a surprise. What could it be? And you spin the wheel, and it's like 2 shots of Jaeger, and you're like, I don't want that, but I'll do it because I want it. But there would be, you spin the wheel, and it could be. Like a shot of whatever, or sometimes it would be a prairie fire, which is vodka and Frank's hot sauce mixed together.
Oh God, yeah. Oh my God.
Or it would just be a bottle of champagne, but it wasn't good champagne. It was like Cook's or something. So they had that, and then they had an NES set up in the back, and if you beat Punch Out, they would just give you a bottle of champagne. And so, of course, we'd roll through with dorks who would just go straight to the back. Yeah, fucking Dan Reichert just made like a beeline for it. And was like, all right, I'm gonna beat up Mike Tyson. And just like
I'm a fucking huge gamer nerd Nintendo fan. I've never beaten Punch Out. That's
it's the best. Just going in there with people and they just they clean up. Yeah, that was a great bar. I think that one's now gone. That's defunct now.
It's gone. Yeah. But Kilowatt was another one I really liked, which is an SF. Have you been there?
That? I don't know if I've been to that.
I think you have.
I probably have. That's the
you
thing
and
about
I would
dive
just
bars.
go. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know if you've been to them for obvious reasons.
Yes, it's pretty easy to black out in them because they have a fucking wheel. By the way, what is it? What is bird in the hand? Is that like a proverb? Bird in the hand?
Bird.
Okay, because I had a running joke with my wife early on when we started dating that like she wasn't familiar with a bunch of those. So I'd be like, you know what they say, bird in the hand, right? And she'd be like, no, who says that? And I'd be like, bird in the hand, 2 in the bush.
Yeah.
And she's like, what does that mean? And I was like, well, if you have one that you're holding, it's better than 2 that you see in a bush that you're not holding. And she'd be like, why would you have a bird in your hand? I'm like, no, it's like if you don't actually, if you have something.
You caught the bird.
Yeah, you're already holding it.
You're out hunting for birds.
And
birds
she would be like, why would you need a bird in your hand?
Let's say it's a pheasant. So you caught the pheasant, you're holding it in your
money.
Hand. Yeah.
Let's call it money.
Yeah,
right?
let's say you got $20 in one hand.
But there's $40.
There could be $40. That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Because $40 doesn't fly away.
You gotta put your $20 down. Why would you look in the sewer for $40? That doesn't make birds could be in the bush. That's a place they might go automatically.
Yes. So
it is absurd to assume there'd be $40 in a bush. Why would there be $40 in there?
If it's a money tree, which isn't real, but also in the money tree, the money can fly away.
Yeah, why not just
in this proverb? But yeah, so no, early on it was just like we just didn't know those or didn't get those for some odd reason. I'm like, we grew up in the same state, but in different parts of it. Like you fucking pork roll versus Taylor hand people. I
thought you were just you fucking pork roll. That's not a nice thing to say.
That would be like a take off the ring. This marriage is over. Call somebody a pork
That's
roll.
actually a power move. Is you get a fake ring, and if you think you're gonna have a fight, you put that one on instead of the real one, and then in the middle of the fight, you just rip it off and throw it. And
that's what I do. I have my
run the other direction.
My regular ring, my wedding ring, is skin colored, my skin, and then on top of it is a different ring that is dark. And I would take that off and be like, "This marriage is over." And then I would make up the fight, and then afterwards be like, "We're still married. I still have the regular ring
I have a
on."
skin tight bathing suit that is exactly flesh colored, and I wear it to public pools. And then when I get kicked out, I sue them.
That is
The kind of thing I do.
You know, you should. Does it have genitalia on it?
Oh yeah, all over it.
You should wear it backwards so people are just like, "Hey, penis bug guy is saying."
So no one can sneak up on me.
Anyway, these are the kind of conversations you can have at a dive bar if you go to one, because they're great. They're a good
great.
time.
They're a good time.
Yeah.
I will shout out one more dive bar. Actually, no. Again, this is the big question. Is it a dive bar? There's a place in Berkeley
Is it a penis
called.
butt?
Is it a? There's a place called Spats in Berkeley. It's called Spats, which is again, it has the
A
aesthetic.
type of fight, right? Like that is.
That's a good point. It is
a spat
I
is a
think-
type of argument.
I think they mean the kind of those little things that Scrooge McDuck puts on his flippers. Are they called flippers? Duck feet? Feet? Webbers? Anyway, it's
Those are grill.
those things that rich people in the 1930s would put over their shoes so they wouldn't get mud on them. You know, it makes them look like saddle shoes. Spats, little things.
Spats? I didn't
Spats.
know that.
That's
I
what
thought
a spat is.
was a fight that you had.
That's
like
also what that is.
a spat's a fight that doesn't last long, right?
A spat is like a stupid little kerfuffle, like a little little fight, little argument.
What were those short videos before TikTok?
Vine?
Vine. Yeah, it's sort of like an argument Vine.
Vine is a thing you should never order at a dive bar.
If you have an argument in your hand and two on the Vine,
Yeah.
then just take the one in your hand.
Yeah.
The spat.
Spats has a giant wheel.
Okay.
So the thing that makes it maybe not a dive bar, questionably, is it's a college bar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's like it is a very specifically like this is 20 feet from a college. This is a college bar. This is not. I mean, it is for all intents and purposes, it's a dive, but it's not like if the college was not there, would this bar be there? Is the question. Whereas a dive bar is like this thing has been here no matter what. This thing is. I mean, a dive bar is a good dive bar is the food and beverage equivalent of a cockroach. Like it will outlast the apocalypse.
Yes. I went to a place a lot growing up in New Jersey. Not growing up, when I became old enough to drink. I wasn't like a kid drinking there. Called the Orange Lantern, which is, it's got a lot of the sort of tendencies and the
Isn't it
semblances
just
of,
like Sinestro?
I think so, of a dive bar, but they also like, they do the thing that I don't like where there's just like plastic NASCARs hanging from the ceiling, but they're covered in dust. There's a bunch of TVs that show sports on a Sunday and people show up in jerseys and you're like, it's almost a sports bar. But it's also really, or at least was when I lived there, 16 years ago, really divey in a lot of ways. And I love that about that. And it's, they used to have like cheap ass cocktails. You used to be able to smoke in there and it's in front of a fire department, which is really funny. Like the idea that like there's firemen all day who, basically firemen, we love firemen, right? That's like the most Trump thing I've ever said. We love the firemen. They got water, they got trucks. They don't work until they have to, and then when they do, they have the hardest job in the world, right? But mostly they do push-ups and chili cook-offs and shit like that.
And they can't just, I mean, that's, if you didn't have to go do something incredibly responsible, that'd be a great job to just go to a dive bar,
You would not be surprised then at how many firemen were there all the time that would all of a sudden just be like, uh-oh, and you'd be like, hey buddy, where's the fire, right? And they would like, like the
and you get kicked out.
Yeah,
like
and it's also like as a single man that looks like a bald goblin, or I was a single man, right? I still look like a bald goblin. Having to go to a place like the Orange Lantern to, potentially meet women, and then all of a sudden have to compete with like 14, ripped honky firemen. Not great. So when I was there on a Friday night and there was a fire, good. Head on out, take care of that fire. Less
Hot guys,
competition.
get the fuck out.
Yeah, get out. It's like they rang up. You would just see these guys all look down at the same time, like, fuck.
Hunk
and they
alarm, get out of here, hunks. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Go do a calendar shoot. It's bald goblin time.
Just imagine, I don't know, like you're on the other side of it and like, you know, this fucking guy just carries your child out of this burning building and saves its life and hands you your, you know, your daughter or whatever. And you're like, oh my God, thank you so much. Dude, you fucking stink of Jameson.
Yeah.
You'd be like, well, you know, my kid's alive, but you guys should have better practices. But yeah, a lot of people drank there. You would see mailmen there, like on just in the middle of their route. I'm calling out all these specific people in Paramus, New Jersey, who probably still have those jobs. But yeah, it was very divey in a lot of ways.
I'm not going to advocate, firemen drinking. I think that's maybe that's not my business. But I will say, of all the sort of like, it's different from being like a pilot where you have to go and very safely drive a thing that carries a lot of people, or a surgeon where you have to go do something very careful. In the case of a fireman. That's a whole other story. In the case of a fireman, you have to go into a burning building, which is a thing that I feel like maybe a little bit of Dutch courage wouldn't hurt on that front. But at the same time, check this out.
Liquid confidence.
And if you're, again, don't drive drunk. Don't ever do that. That's a bad thing. But that said, odds are if you hop in the fire truck and jump behind the wheel, there's a chance that you're behind the back wheel. You know, they got that second steering wheel in the back. Does that do anything? I don't know. I don't drive fire trucks. And at the same time, fire trucks have a noisemaker. They have a thing they turn on, the bright flashing light, and it makes everyone get the fuck out of their way. So it's kind of like keep away.
You know what doesn't have that is mail trucks. Mail trucks don't have any of that. And so a mailman getting drunk 9 a.m. on a Saturday, probably not a great idea.
Here's the thing. Those trucks catch fire on their own for no reason sometimes. And
mail trucks?
Yeah.
That's true.
I listened to a whole podcast that was all about mail trucks, and I don't know why I did that, but I learned so much, those stupid little things.
Well, yeah, why would you do that on this show that just talked about dive bars for 45 minutes? Who would listen to a stupid podcast about one specific
I don't know, dive bars are a thrill. You're like, ooh, yeah, dive bars, but like mail trucks. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, one man's dive bar is another man's mail truck.
Like they had a thing where they're like what do you call it? Their windshield wiper fluid thing would like infamously like crack open and then leak directly on the battery, and then it would just start fires. So it would just
really,
like, yeah. So those things were like would spontaneously combust all the time, and they had to be like.
Luckily, there's nothing important back there.
Yeah, yeah.
Such as documents.
Yeah. Where's the fire? Anyway. In the front of the mail truck. Yeah. So dive bars are a good time.
They really are. We should go to one.
We should go to a dive bar one of these days. And I implore all of our wonderful listeners to go to dive bars, but, behave yourself.
Yeah, drink responsibly.
Don't be an asshole.
Get a ride there, get a ride back.
Yeah. Be safe out there.
My favorite thing about dive bars is like when they close and everyone's just kind of hanging out in the parking lot and waiting for their, taxis and Ubers to pick them up and stuff like that. And people are throwing up and making out. That's a good time.
It's beautiful. It's like a Hieronymus Bosch painting. It's good.
Yeah, it totally is. I don't see that anymore because I'm old and I'm, with a child or whatever. But like, I can't be out there at 2:00 in the morning. That's
a young man's
2 a.m.
game.
is, yeah.
But the good thing is about a good dive bar can recreate the feeling of 2 a.m. at 3 in the afternoon. So just, go do that. But
that is true.
If you're going to go to a wretched hive of scum and villainy, don't be a Dr. Evazan or a Ponda Baba.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's the part of the show where I thank our extra special Patreon producers, Chip Chunkling, Scott Davis, Ben Burkhalter, Paul Atienza, Kevin Lemasurier, Steve Cam, Caleb Hilliard, and Billy McKendry. Thanks a bunch, fellas.
Can I get a cleaner mug? This one's dirty.
Fuck you, man. It's the cleanest one I got.